Stellaris is in its 8th year of its life cycle, and so far we've been blessed with 20 DLCs. Some are must-haves and some of them are optional. Now, the 21st expansion, Cosmic Storms, sadly fits in that second category. The overall feature set and its implementation is rather middling, and it doesn't really add too much to the core Stellaris experience. Sure, it adds what are effectively natural disasters, but it executes it in such a weird way that it makes it feel like there was a far larger scope planned, but it never really made it off of the drawing board. So what does Cosmic Storms bring to the table? What sort of experience can you expect from this mechanical expansion? And is it worth the $12.99 and or local equivalent that the developers are asking for it? The Cosmic Storms themselves are the main attraction, and most of the content is firmly attached to them. We're talking things like technology, planetary building, station upgrades, events, dig sites, and nearly everything is hyper-focused around this storm experience. For instance, you've got the two precursors. They are so laser focused on storms that it's kind of ridiculous in terms of flexibility. Their end relics allow you to spawn or suppress set storms, which is sadly not all that inspirational if you take a look at some of the other options that are on the table with other precursors. But then again, we haven't had any of those for quite some years. So it's a nice, refreshing addition to the overall Stellaris experience. When it comes to the storms, previously they would start appearing somewhere in the mid-game. Now they can start appearing pretty much instantly and become what I could only call a nuisance. They come in 8 different flavors, 6 of them give bonuses and malices to your workers and generate planetary effects, and the other 2 are the End Storm and the Shroud Storm, or Psionic Storm, depending on how you want to call it, and basically they both really mess up your game, as the former devastates your territory, and the latter treats your space like a slot machine and changes stellar bodies randomly, as well as the deposits in the systems that it passes through. Now, when a storm has passed, it can then generate events, and from what I can see, only one dig site, as there is just a really limited amount of content here, and with very few follow-up chain events. But overall, there's just not that much content here, which is just such a real shame. You can directly impact the storms in their path with a variety of planetary and station buildings, but all it does is either you spend a building slot to lock yourself out of this main attraction for the expansion, or you go all in and use your storms to leverage your civics and their buildings to get maximum value out of them, as you can then leverage the storm's effects for, say, maxing out energy production. But it's all random, so you don't know whether or not you even are going to consistently get these resources. Speaking of civics, the expansion comes with 3 of them. 2 of them are fully storm focused, and one that's more generalist and actually kind of awesome. First, we got astrometeorology, which is all about knowing where storms are going to go, as well as getting some local bonuses when they are in your system. Then there's storm devotion, which is all about summoning storms to your empire and using them to leverage your political power when they happen. How this works, I don't know, but apparently you get a 20% Diplo weight bonus when there is a storm, which is quite something. Meanwhile, the best addition to the DLC is a civic that can apply to any playthrough, which is Planetscapers. It's a bonkers good civic that's all about removing blockers from your planet and generating crazy bonuses whilst doing it. It also effectively gets Mastery of Nature for free, which is an Ascension perk, which is just utterly insane to think about. It just gets that. No questions asked. You wanna get some additional districts on your planet? Poof, you've got them. The Origin Storm Chasers is specifically designed to introduce players to the storm mechanics early on, and is really not all that interesting to use on repeated playthroughs. Sure, they have a bit of a story attached to them, but for an expansion that really focuses on mechanics, and it kind of totes itself as to be one, this Origin is just not all that mechanically inclined. And another thing, it's really disappointing that their events and situations don't really go anywhere interesting except for a big storm at the end game. And I really felt they were building up to something for quite some time with some of their events, but then you just get experimental hyperspace breaching, which is a tech that you could just get normally in the game rather than something unique, which I thought was just absolutely uninteresting. What the expansion does do well is a completely unique new map mode, which is the weather forecast mode, which is beautifully visualized, and it finally puts a little bit more focus on the map mode system, something that I didn't really use all that much previously outside from trying to figure out what the diplomatic stance is for certain empires to you or others. I found myself using the map modes far often whilst the storms were on there, but sadly the overall UI for the mode itself can be quite difficult to read due to the transparency on the bottom right of the screen, which is just, once again, unfortunate. The entire expansion feels undercooked, and I have the feeling that there was a far more plan for this that, again, never left the drawing board. There is no space FEMA. You can't play as a humanitarian empire to help others who've been hit by storms. You can't use espionage to summon storms to enemies. You can actually just send a science ship into enemy space and just spawn one, which is crazy. The rather small amount of content that directly interacts with the storms, talking about events, dig sites, etc. is just so strange. Sure, it's an expansion based around mechanics, but there's just not all that much that is actually leveraging it. And especially considering Stellaris is all about finding the magnificence of the galaxy and the universe, there's just not a lot of that here, which is just, once again, so strange. All you end up with is a patrolling random modifier in space that can hit you unless you spend a building slot on avoiding them. Overall, Stellaris Cosmic Storms is an experience that may be interesting for people that want to have another layer to the game and a little bit more randomness, a little bit of randomization being thrown in there. However, for everybody else, feel free to keep this one optional or just wait on a sale. If you're still not sure whether or not Cosmic Storms is for you, I will be, or have been, if you're already watching this in the future, upload a video about the Storm Chasers with a full run through to see what they feel like. Maybe that will pull you over the threshold or decide to close your wallet. In the meantime, this particular update is also part of the Season 8 Season Pack, which comes with this Machine Age and the Grand Archive, which comes out at the end of the year. So maybe that's something for you to try out. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves, and as always, each other.